let's continue with that discussion. What are the legal rights of both the employer and employee when it comes to mandatory vaccinations? Let's get some clarity now from labour law specialist Natasha Moni. Thank you so much for your time. Natasha, we do appreciate it. I think let's just start off with what we do know about companies' rights and whether they can or can't implement these vaccine policies. I know certain companies have implemented these vaccine policies, but somebody who works at a company that's been told you have to go and get your vaccine, your COVID-19 vaccine, otherwise you will no longer be able to work here. Is that allowed? Is that lawful?
There's a whole lot of things that must have happened before the company can place mandatory vaccination on your plate, and that is a risk assessment, a code aligned to the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and also the company needs to allow the employees to digest what it is they're now expecting of the employees. And in that digestion, they must then put it up in the workplace as to what's going on. If the employee doesn't want to be vaccinated for whatever reason, be it medical, be it religious reasons, it has then scope to declare a dispute with the employer and to have the employer try and resolve it. If the employer cannot resolve it, then the Labour Inspectorate must get involved in terms of mandatory vaccinations.
Can I ask you this question? In your view and understanding of the law, are mandatory vaccinations unconstitutional?
It depends. Remember that this is a pandemic, and so we're looking at how to help the world and how to help South African society. And in that, the Constitution says that everybody has those rights. However, there is a limitation to those rights. And so if an employee says, I cannot be vaccinated, then the grounds for which they cannot be vaccinated will then be considered or should be considered by the employer. And there's medical grounds, and they seem to stand up first and in the forefront of this debate, and then religious grounds or other constitutional rights, fundamental rights to employees. But with the medical grounds, the employer has a right to consider them and has a right to take that employee on to another doctor to verify what it is that the employee is saying. Only then must the employer try and look for alternatives, viable alternatives, to try and assist that employee. If they can't, what is suggested is they place that employee on some sort of medical incapacity. This is different to those people, persons who refuse to take the vaccination because of other fundamental rights.
I want to maybe ask it in this way. It's Human Rights Day on Monday. Some have argued that they don't want to get the vaccine for either religious reasons. Some have said we don't want to get the vaccine because of health reasons. But some don't want to get the vaccine because they believe that there's poison in the vaccine or whatever other reason that has come about from these COVID-19 vaccines. And many are saying it's a violation of my basic human rights to be forced to get the vaccine, not just in a workplace, but also to be granted access into restaurants, to be granted access into public events, into entertainment events. Is it going to be a human rights violation? Should government come out and say you need to show proof of vaccine if you are going to attend a soccer match, for example?
Well, in the code, for instance, it says that the employer can ask for the vaccination card. So the government is certainly not seeing it as a human right. It needs to be weighed up against the general population. And I'm afraid, and I'm not a constitutional or human rights lawyer, but I'm afraid that the populace, the general society will probably trump the individual rights. It has not been tested, and it needs to be tested, especially on medical grounds, where I think that there is a possibility of success. However, I'm not a human rights lawyer.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your insights, though. We do appreciate it. That was a labour law specialist, Natasha Moni, who just provided some clarity on what the law actually says about mandatory vaccinations.